Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel was released in the spring of 2023. It is now summer of 2025, and I've yet to finish the game. Now, I'm obviously not trying to review the game in its entirety, but I do usually side with the opinion that you can generally determine as to whether a piece of media, be it a book or a video game, is your kind of thing after only consuming it for a short while. I know many people feel very strongly about this game, and we are all entitled to how we feel. If anything, I'm envious of people that love this game, just as much as the prequel, or even more so. And even if I don't feel as though this is the sequel I wanted, I am still happy we got something. After all, I love this world too. I will be sharing sentiments that many others have also shared, and you've likely heard before, as this is a very popular topic. But I for one usually don't mind rehashing old arguments, and I just wanted to talk about it. I had actually pre-ordered the game back in 2023, but I didn't play it on release. I think at the time I was waiting for the right moment. I loved Breath of the Wild so much that I wanted to try and recapture the magic of playing it for the first time. But something that made my initial experience of Breath of the Wild so special was that I didn't knowingly play it at the right time. It wasn't planned or orchestrated, and only after playing it did I realize it was just what I needed when I happened to play it. I had never played a Zelda game before this. I remember taking an interest in Twilight Princess, but I had to settle for watching over the shoulder of my brother. I want to say he didn't let me have my own save file, but I might be misremembering and doing him a disservice. But he also will likely never watch this video, and so can't object anyway. I do have him to thank though, for introducing me to Breath of the Wild. He lent me his Switch back in 2018, and I was hooked from day one. I played exclusively in handheld mode and mostly in my bed. When I like something, I really like it. I would wake up, play, sleep, and repeat, messing up my sleep schedule because I just wanted to keep going. It was the perfect escape. The quiet solitude, the freedom, and despite the fact that you might want to get a move on as to help out Zelda, I took my sweet time exploring. When I did reach the storyline ending of the game, I cried and enjoyed the final fight and cutscenes, but I couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed that that was how it all ended. I'm not sure what I was expecting, and I have played games like this previously, where you just get sent back post-credits to just before you fight the last boss. But I really wanted to see what happens next. If we don't get to see Hyrule in its prime, can we at least see it being rebuilt? Even though I felt this way, I didn't really anticipate that would be a sequel. I wasn't sure how they could do it. I understand the cyclical nature of these games and the sheer popularity and success of Breath of the Wild specifically. They found a style that really worked, and it brought in a whole new generation of players, but how could they top this? I want to say that for the most part, I still love Breath of the Wild just as much as I did. Sure, I feel disappointed in tears, but like I mentioned before, I was happy to accept more of this Hyrule, however that was presented. Skipping to 2019, there were already talks about a sequel, naturally, and I remember seeing the first reveal that the game was in production, and I was so happy. It looked to be post Breath of the Wild. There was a real emphasis on the eeriness and mysticism, and oh my god, look at Zelda. She's free, and actually she's with us. I did dare to think that we would maybe get to play her, and that we could switch between the characters and have different ability sets, and more importantly, that she wouldn't be absent throughout the majority of the game again. Link and Zelda were out in the field, researching. They were going to answer our questions, and something was brewing. I loved watching lore videos at this time, extensive breakdowns of the clips and trailers, theories of what might come next. The anticipation was palpable, and I never did find the right time to play it. But when I did, well, I wasn't sure how I felt. To put it simply, I just didn't get into it. I did enjoy a lot of what I played. I really liked the opening sequence with Zelda and Link beneath the castle, and the Sky Islands were fascinating at first. This was entirely new territory after all. It felt mystical and ancient. The sun-drenched terrain, the golden foliage, the new abilities and mechanics. I tried to keep up with what was going on story-wise, meeting Rauru, an actual Zonai, and Zelda unfortunately crossing over into a different timeline. The premise was all there. It was when I eventually hit the ground that the problems started to arise. I don't know what I expected. I suppose it was inevitable that they would be using the same map, but I didn't expect it to be reused in the way it was. In Breath of the Wild, I had such little knowledge of areas from the Zelda series, so everything was new. I would spend hours just riding around, exploring the biomes. Having an entirely unknown map in any game is so exciting, and the game knows its strengths. The freedom of traversal, go anywhere, climb everything. I loved it. Looking back though, I do think it's fair to say that a lot of the areas in Breath of the Wild were quite empty, but for me, the atmosphere was enough to overlook this. It felt realistic, and I don't want areas to be filled with stuff just for the sake of it. After a few of the Hudson sign puzzles in Tears of the Kingdom, I started ignoring them, and once you've seen one of the caves, you've kind of seen them all. Shrines in both games are a bit samey, but I never did many in Breath of the Wild anyway. Tears did add 2 entirely new layers to the world. I can't really speak to the quality of the skies, as I quit before I managed to explore much, and whilst the depths were a crazy reveal at first, that excitement was short-lived. I enjoy that these games explore darker themes, and it's something about Breath of the Wild that I love. It's really quite creepy. And I think that this forgotten, hellish, as above so below kind of area was a cool idea, but it doesn't really seem developed beyond that, an idea. Dare I say it maybe lacks depth? I did like running around and finding all the light routes, but beyond just doing them for the sake of satisfaction, they don't really illuminate much that's worth seeing. I remember stumbling across a large structure and being impressed by the scale, but not finding anything to do there. Assuming that maybe I'd come at the wrong time or that it would be linked to a quest later on, but it is just possible that I didn't explore enough. Honestly, the part of the map I was the most excited for was revisiting places that we already knew, to see how things had changed. Of the 4 major areas, I first went to Zoras Domain. In replaying the start of the game to capture this footage, I'm aware of just how much they steer you to Rito Village, and maybe ignoring this was my downfall, but I really wanted to see Zora's Domain. This is easily one of my favourite spots and storylines from the previous game. Even though the main structure of the court is the same, albeit a bit grubby, it was lovely to see the new Mipha's court atop the mountain, and the water slide erected in her honour. But I have to be honest, my time here was a little underwhelming. Of course, I have to reiterate that these are my opinions and they are based on my brief experience playing, and what I personally find interesting in games. I know there is surely much I haven't seen, but I am making the point that I was put off enough by that which I did explore as to not feel interested in continuing. I'm going to be breaking down my experience in Zora's Domain and the Water Temple, as this was the last thing I did before I quit. I will be overanalyzing the lore, which I admit is quite unfair, as this is largely done in retrospect. And I want to say that I have heard that the Water Temple is the least popular, I think, and it is unfortunate that I did this one first, and let it set expectations for what the rest of the game would have to offer. Forgive me for not knowing a lot about Zelda lore as a whole, but as I understand it, in this game, releasing Ganon from his shackles beneath Hyrule Castle led to an outpouring of gloom, which did a bunch of things, including the lowering or revealing of previously hidden sky islands, including islands directly above Zora's Domain. When we first travel here, we see that a disgusting looking sludge has infected basically all the water surrounding the court, including the East Reservoir, assuming that this is also a result of the upheaval and the gloom. We meet Sidon's fiancée, Yona. I guess Link riding on his back meant nothing to him, but okay. And later reunite with Sidon himself, who is cleansing the water in the newly founded Mipha's court. He wonders if those floating sky islands could be the source of the falling sludge, as though there isn't a waterfall of it directly behind him. And he explains that he has tasked a historian with uncovering any and all documented information about the sky islands, implying that he had no idea they existed. Next he tells us that he must cleanse the pools here in Mipha's court, as this place is the source of the water that flows into Zora's Domain. But I don't remember this being said in Breath of the Wild. This used to be just a mountain with the Lynel, so was there a different source of water back then? I'm even more confused when I read the Learning of the Zora Part 6, which recalls our fight with said Lynel, but that afterwards, as if in celebration of the newfound peace, clean water mysteriously began flowing at the top of Polymus Mountain, which didn't happen either. Perhaps it was a delayed effect and actually happened years after the Lynel's defeat. It does still read though as quite disconnected. After this chat with Sidon, we seek out our friend and historian, Giotto, who has terrible eyesight and can't find the broken chunk of slate mere meters away from him. We restore it and learn, via a riddle, the first steps in accessing the Sky Islands. Part of the step involves using the Mark of the King, and so naturally we go to see the king. But the king, Dorephan, has gone into hiding after being attacked by Zelda. Everyone is confused, but in agreement that it must have something to do with the sky. We inform Dorephan about the stone slate. He says that he recognizes the phrase, Mark of the King, and that it refers to one of his scales, but knows not of what to do with it. Okay, but does he really not know anything about these floating islands? He says they appeared as if from nowhere, but is he not part of the royal lineage? Would information not be passed down about the region from generation to generation? Maybe not. Regardless, we take the scale to the skyfish and shoot it through the droplet-shaped structure. A pillar of green light begins to stream out of the reservoir. We know where we must go next. I just wanted to briefly touch on Sidon as a character, and I know this is a family game and so we don't really need to have overly complex character arcs, I guess, but this just felt so cheesy. I'm sorry. Yona realizes at this point that the domain needs Sidon. Beyond staying close and purifying the water, he should go with Link, but Sidon is hesitant. We then fight a sludge worm, and I guess he realizes that his skills are better used elsewhere. At the same time this conversation is happening, we can now see two Zora also purifying the water, but Sidon told us when we first met him that he is uniquely qualified to deal with the water here, and that he cannot leave. But perhaps he meant it in more of a responsibility kind of way, less a literal possession of unique powers. Nevertheless, it feels very abrupt. She tells him to go, she doesn't need his protection, and he won't lose her like he lost Mifa. And he just agrees, realizing that he was giving into his fear once more of losing someone he loves. I suppose it took this particular event for this to happen, but it's very like one and done, and I want more for him. Okay, back to the quest. Sidon, now with us, creates a whirlpool around the beam of light revealing a door at the bottom of the reservoir, of which he too had no idea existed. We now enter the ancient Zora Waterworks, and I thought this place was so cool. It was eerie and I loved seeing the older Zora tiling and architecture. There are multiple nods to Zonai influence here too, namely the final pedestal, which features Raru's seal. But now I have to question things again. Suppose the Zora and the Zonai made these waterworks together at an unspecified time, but older than say 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago when the calamity occurred, and according to one of the Zora monuments in Breath of the Wild, the Zora and Hyrule Kings created the East Reservoir Lake to combat flooding in the area. This reservoir was to be managed by the king of the domain and all kings who follow. It was built on top of an entrance to the ancient waterworks, but the waterworks' existence was only vaguely documented on a broken stone slate, conveniently sealed away all this time. Why did the royal family, or any Zora for that matter, not know about its existence? Has the reservoir truly never been drained? Surely that could be a use for this system, or even a desire to explore or preserve it. Upon reaching this final pedestal, only Raru's arm can bypass the seal, bringing down a waterfall passage to the Sky Island. I have to wonder if this was always the case, for Raru to have the master key for bridging the sky and land. The same seal controls the taps at the top of the water temple too, so even though the Zora could reach Wellspring Island, they couldn't control it. I'd love to know the nature of the relationship between the Zonai and the Zoras, and what exactly Wellspring was used for. Maybe it was a little resort area for the Zora, but for the Zonai and Raru, it was for the secret stone, and just a temple for the sage, thus the seal. I know it's just a game, but I wouldn't object to some context. Wellspring Island itself is visually impressive, there's no doubt. The big taps, the many waterfalls, and if you enjoy unique movement, the low gravity and water bubbles certainly add something new. It feels very gamified, of course. It's a dungeon in a Zelda game. I don't even think Vavruta made sense. Why is it an escape room, if it's meant to be like a piloted war machine? But it's a Zelda dungeon. You don't have to pick apart everything, and I certainly didn't at the time. I forgave things for not making sense because I was immersed. And Vavruta is so intimidating. She's a massive robotic elephant, and we know Mifa died there. It scared me, I was uncomfortable, and it certainly felt like a dungeon. The setup was good, and I was emotionally invested. Wellspring Island didn't have the same investment. I didn't get that triumphant feeling I did in Breath of the Wild. I wasn't avenging my childhood friend anymore. The stakes didn't feel as high. I don't know who this stage is. I don't like the name Secret Stone. I don't know, I just didn't like it. I want to say again, after saying all of this, that I didn't have all of these thoughts as I was playing, and they didn't directly stop me playing the game. But the lore was something I had in the back of my mind, and I did research as I played. And it was disheartening to realize that there is quite a big disconnect from the game I'd come to love and its sequel. The Zora Stone monuments I mentioned from Breath of the Wild have basically been retconned in Tears of the Kingdom. The previous ones detailing Zora's history, including information about the East Reservoir, have fallen to ruin. It's not said how or why, just that Dorephan has encouraged Sidon to replace them, with words from the heart. I'm sorry, I love Sidon, but I don't think his way of writing lends itself to documenting history. In part 7, Sidon talks about meeting Link, and the pair conquering the divine beast Vavruta, and stopping the heavy rainfall plaguing the land. Except he doesn't. He doesn't even mention Divine Beast Varuta at all. The entire questline in Breath of the Wild has been reduced to this. She is just known as the threat. What possible reason could he have for omitting her existence, as though it doesn't have great significance to his sister or people? Is this not the sequel to The Last Calamity? So then it just must be for lack of interest in lore consistency, which is disappointing. Where are the beasts, Nintendo? In many ways, yes, this game is a direct sequel, but it is in situations like this where the writing just seems to disagree. And I didn't realize that people were playing this game for the first time. Like, this was their first Zelda game, and they hadn't played Breath of the Wild. But I personally did approach this game as a direct sequel, wherein you really should have played Breath of the Wild first, because that was how it was marketed. And maybe the inconsistencies and lack of confirmation, like what happened to the Sheik attack, isn't important for a lot of players, but it is to me. But in general, I don't think we were supposed to question this as much as we did. Or I have. Like, they didn't expect us to care about the things that we do. Players went wild with theories about Breath of the Wild, with sometimes very little to go off of. They were practically writing sequels for them, and Tears of the Kingdom had its work cut out in terms of payoff. I can only speak to what I have seen and heard, but I think the general sentiment is that the game did fall short of these expectations. I can totally see how Tears of the Kingdom is incredibly fun to play. You get all the freedom of movement from the previous game, but now you can craft your own vehicles and more. The physics in the game are fantastic. And Fusion and Ultra Hand is so creative. You can tell the team worked so hard on making this, and it's very impressive. But I feel like for me, I kind of avoided the system. I'm sure I would have made better use of it had I played longer, but for the time I didn't really have any desire to create. I found myself just making whatever weapons I could, not really optimizing anything. I don't really want to go off on another rant again, but it did throw me a little to see that the Lizalfos now have blade horns. Perfect for fusing. I'm sure they didn't evolve to have those in the gap between games, so it's likely also due to the gloom, right? I wanted to mention this because I think whilst this mechanic does brilliantly reinvent the game, adding something new to the series, I kinda dislike how much power the player has. The go anywhere at any time, build anything, have all the powers can be a hindrance. Even some of the enemies have been redesigned to better suit the system for us. I don't want to be a god in a sandbox where the world feels like it was created for me and items look familiar. At the end of the day, the devs made the game they wanted to make, and upon initial experience, it just wasn't for me. I may go back and play more. I have already heard that I haven't seen some of the best bits, and actually, in going back to record the footage, I did find myself enjoying the game. But I will always mourn the sequel that we never got. Thank you for watching.